Today I'm going to show you about the mini spinner. I'm going to give you just a few tips that I have learned working on my mini spinner. I want to preface this by saying that I am by no means an expert spinner, and what I will be sharing with you today is just information that I have learned along the way. I've only really been spinning for about 2.5 years, and but I have learned quite a bit in that time frame. Before I get started on showing you how I work with my mini spinner, I just want to kind of give you a quick overview on how the mini spinner works. And it's very much like a manual treadle wheel. On a manual wheel, you have a whirl that looks like this, and the drive band goes in one of these notches that makes the flyer turn however many rotations to however many rotations of the drive wheel. The mini spinner uses the motor for the ratio, the RPMs, how fast the motor is going to determine the ratio of how fast the bobbin spins, or how fast the flyer spins around the bobbin. On a manual wheel, you would use a larger whirl to spin a thicker yarn. Now this is just a small little whirl that I have here. So a smaller whirl on a manual wheel will give you a thinner yarn, and a thicker whirl, the bigger ones, will give you a thicker yarn. On the mini spinner, it goes by the speed of the motor as well as the tension on the bobbin. To loosen up the bobbin, you will turn it towards you. This is to release the tension on the bobbin. You're turning it towards you. If you need to tighten up the tension on your bobbin, you're going to turn the bobbin away from you. The mini spinner does have a scotch tension, which is here in the back. It's hard to see because it's a clear, kind of a clear cable here. And you can adjust it with this knob right here. And the drive band goes around this part of the flyer. And when I'm not using my mini spinner, I always take that drive band off. And I do the same thing for my ladybug wheel. I have been told that it just kind of lets that drive band relax a little bit, and it'll probably last longer. It won't get stretched out as much. So whenever I'm not using my wheel, I always take that drive band off of the whirl to just give it kind of a bit of a break. So that's just the basics of this wheel, of this mini spinner. Now, I use the same concepts with the mini spinner that I do with the manual wheel, but with the manual wheel, I'm changing the speed of how fast I treadle, and on the mini spinner, I will change the speed of the motor. But in both cases, I am changing the tension on the bobbin the same way. Now, same as on my manual wheel, on my ladybug, I usually start with a very low tension on my bobbin. The faster the flyer spins around, and the less tension that you have on your bobbin, the easier it will be for you to get a thin single. If you have a lot of tension on your bobbin and your speed is going slower, you will be able to produce a thicker weight yarn. So I typically spin a pretty thin single, and in order to do that, you have to start your bobbin out with almost no tension at all. I mean, I usually loosen this up almost all the way, maybe just slightly, just so that I can slightly see. Let's see if I can turn this around just real quick. So I can slightly see, oh, here, I've knocked it off now. I don't know if you'll be able to see in there, but there's a little spring right here, and I might even be able to see it better this way. but there's a spring right here. And I just, you see, if I tighten it up, it's really tight. I just make it so that it's just barely moving on that bobbin. You know, so it's just tight enough to just have a tiny bit of tension on it. That's where I start, because like I said, I like to spin a thin single. So I'm going to start the wheel up here. I have my foot pedal down here on the floor, and I can start spinning. And now I can spin a very thin single. The idea is that you want the wheel spinning fast enough so that you can let the twist get into the yarn, but you don't want it pulling out of your hand. And actually, I'm feeling a bit of tension on this, so I'm just going to even back that off just a little bit. Now, you know that you have enough tension when you can feed it in and it's not spinning back on itself before it gets into the orifice. Now, I'm not spinning, I'm not going very fast, so I'm gonna try and speed it up a little bit here. But you just speed it up right here. There's a knob here for the speed. So I'm just gonna start it up here, and I'm gonna speed it up just a little bit. And I think I've got it. You see how it's kind of there's a bit there that it's kind of spinning back on itself. So I don't have quite enough tension for this speed. So I'll just add just a tiny bit of tension. And the thing is just add a tiny bit at a time, and you'll find your rhythm. And then again, if you add a little bit too much, sometimes I add a little bit too much and then I have to back it back off again. So once you find that perfect tension for what you're currently spinning, you're good to go for a whole 8 ounces, because you can fit quite a bit on this the bobbins for this mini spinner. And if it spins a little too fast, then just turn it down a little bit. That's the nice thing about this mini spinner, is you can go at your own speed. You can go faster or slower, but the idea is to be able to not have to grip the fiber in your hand really tightly, but to be able to draft out at the rate at which you want to make your single. If you don't have the correct tension on your bobbin when you're spinning, for instance, if you are trying to spin a thicker yarn and your bobbin tension is not proper, is not strong enough, or your speed is too fast, then your yarn will get clumped up. Okay, so for instance, if we're trying to spin a thicker yarn, our bobbin tension's fine, it's drawing in properly, but if our speed is too high, then what will happen is the twist will come too quickly before you can draft it out, and then what's going to happen is your fiber is going to get all twisted, the fiber supply, and you're going to end up with thick and thin spots. So if you find that your yarn is not consistent, then what you need to do is you need to decide, okay, am I spinning, is my speed too fast for the thickness that I'm trying to get? If you're really getting thick and thin spots, you might want to slow down your speed a little bit, or tighten up your tension on your bobbin, or loosen up your tension on your bobbin, depending on what you're doing. It's really kind of a trial and error kind of thing that I worked through. So if I want to spin thicker yarn, I need to slow down my speed and tighten up my tension so that it's really pulling that fiber out of my hands, so that I can draft it quicker. And it will, because you need less twist with thicker yarn. Now, if you want to spin thinner, you will back off the tension on your bobbin and speed up the speed to go thinner. And that's all you have to do to get a different type of yarn. The thicker the yarn, the slower the speed of the motor. Now, if you are a really excellent spinner, you might be able to go a little bit faster, but I am not really that excellent of a spinner. I can't go that fast. I have a certain speed, and it's easier for me to adjust the wheel or the motor and the bobbin to what I need it to do in order to get the yarn that I want, versus try to force my spinning style into whatever speed the mini spinner is going at. So if I want a thicker yarn, I need to slow down my speed and tighten up my tension on my bobbin. If I want a thinner yarn, then I need to speed up the speed and really let up on the tension on the bobbin. Now, again, if I want to spin something that's very thin, I want to take almost all of the tension off of the bobbin so that it's barely pulling out of my hand. Let's see how that's how it's kinking up there. That means I don't have enough tension on my bobbin. So I just want to tighten it up just a little bit. Just enough so that, and now I think the motor's a little too fast because it's got all that twist in there now. Let me just get it out. I just want it just enough so that I can just draft and it's not pulling out of my hand, but I can take the fiber down to a very thin single. And depending on the type of fiber that you're working with will dictate whether you can actually get a thin single with it. There are some more coarse wools that are longer staples that no matter how hard you try, there's just no getting a nice thin consistent single. It's just the nature of that particular fiber. But if you're trying to spin a Polwar silk or BFL silk or merino silk and you're trying to spin that very thin and you have a combed top, you should not have any problem spinning that as thin as you want. So here I will show you exactly how I find the correct tension on my bobbin, on my brake band. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with this completely, the brake on the bobbin completely off. So when I start this up, I'm going to start spinning, and you'll notice that it's not spinning on. It's not going onto the bobbin because you see this it's spinning back up on itself and it's not pulling in. So what we need to do in order to do that, we just need to add just a tiny bit of tension until it starts spinning on, until it starts adding in the twist. And it's not going in, so I'm going to stop. On the woolly winder, and I'm not sure if this is the same on a regular flyer because I don't really use a regular flyer very often. But occasionally on the woolly winder, when I'm spinning, I will sometimes notice that no matter how much tension I put on the brake, the yarn just does not go onto the bobbin. And what I have found is that a lot of times this eye right here is the culprit. And what happens is sometimes if I stop real quickly or I start up too quickly or something, sometimes this will get wrapped around somehow, and that it will keep it from, if the yarn is wrapped around that eyelet, and that will keep it from going on the bobbin. So if you try to, if you have a problem, see how that is right there? I'm not sure if you'll be able to see that. Right there, how it's twisted around there like that. If you are having trouble with the yarn going onto the bobbin, that's the first thing that I check. If you keep tightening up the tension on the bobbin and it's still not going, check that little eye right there, because that's probably what the problem is. And then once you get that once you get that off, then everything will start flowing and everything will go back on the bobbin correctly. So I need to put a little bit more twist on it, and I think I'm going to have to draft back over here because there's a lot of twist in that yarn right now. So let me just draft back a little bit so I can, okay, there we go. So I added just a tiny bit of a twist on the bobbin, and again, it's still not quite spinning in enough, so I'm going to tension it a little bit more. And I still have a little bit of extra twist in there. And like I said before, sometimes when I start, if I keep starting and stopping the wheel, sometimes for some reason, I don't know if it's just this particular wheel or if all of the mini spinners do it, but sometimes the twist just or the speed of the bobbin tension changes. See, like now I've just added a tiny bit of tension, and now it's just pulling out of my hands. So you just have to just kind of work with it until you find just the right tension for the yarn that you're trying to get. And it will take some time when you first start spinning a new fiber to really get comfortable with how you want to spin the fiber and how quickly you want it to go on the wheel or on the bobbin. And if the smaller the movement, the easier it will be to adjust, because if you try and do too big of a movement on the brake band, you're going to end up noticing that, oops, I went the wrong way on that one. You're going to end up noticing that you're going to be adjusting it for quite some time because you're doing too much, because you just, the slightest movement, I mean, not even, like a 5-minute turn, it's just a teeny tiny little bit. And see, I've just taken off too much, so I need to put a little bit more back on so that it will start sucking in again. And then once you have your perfect tension on the bobbin and your perfect speed, then you just go and go and go. And again, the hand that's holding my fiber is very loose on the fiber. You don't want to be gripping your fiber. You want it to be a nice, relaxed movement. My fingers on this hand here that is holding the twist back from the fiber supply is just the slightest bit of pressure, just enough to keep the twist back behind my fingers. You don't want to have to be struggling with your fiber. It's a very gentle movement. Like I said, once you get the settings, the speed, and the tension exactly right for how you want to spin the fiber, you can just go for hours. Now, if I want to make my single a little thicker, I will need to slow down my speed, because the faster the speed, the more twist that's going to go into your yarn quicker. And the thicker the yarn, the less twist that you need. And if you try and keep the speed up too fast and you're not drafting quick enough to handle that speed for a thicker yarn, it's just going to end up being thick and thin. You're not going to be able to control it like you might want. So I'm going to go ahead and start it back up again here. And I'm going to also add a little bit more tension on the bobbin, because when you want to spin thicker, you need to have more tension, so it's kind of pulling more out of your hand in order to bring it onto the bobbin. So you can see that I'm spinning a little thicker, and I just have to make sure that I draft out enough as I go. And again, it's pulling a little bit out of my hand a little bit, but that's kind of what we want for the to have a little bit thicker yarn. It's not going to pull totally out of my hand because the fiber is grabbing itself, and it won't break off at this with this amount of twist. But again, I mean, this mini spinner goes quite fast, and I have it here it's about the 9:30 mark, and it goes all the way around to about 5:30. So I have quite a bit of speed that I can add to it. Now, I typically, when I'm spinning my single, I typically spin it where it's at about 10:30 or 11 o'clock. But I could go quite a bit faster with this spinning wheel. And again, you're just going to want to adjust your tension. I'm going to take this a little bit thinner again, and I need to back off on that brake. The thinner you want to go, the more you need to back off on that brake so that it allows less tension on the yarn. Because if you have too much tension on that yarn, it's a thinner single, and it will pull right out of your hand. So you just need just enough tension when you're spinning thinly to let it go drift onto the bobbin, but not have it twist up on itself. And you see how much the yarn is wobbling in the orifice hook there. This is just because the orifice is very large, but Hanson does have what they call an orifice hook. An orifice reducer. Looks like this. There's actually a few of them. This is the other one. This is the small one that I usually use. It's got a much smaller hole. So those are the two holes. There's also one that's larger than this one as well. And I went ahead and ordered all of them because I wasn't sure how I would like them and which size I would use. So to use this, all you're going to do is, since I don't want to pull that back, I'm just going to feed it through here. All you're going to do is feed your single through there, and then it just slides right into that little hole right there. That's it. And then it sticks out slightly. But what this will do for you is it will make it so that your yarn does not wobble around so much in that hole. See how different that is? Now I need a little bit more tension on there. Sometimes I find that when I stop the wheel, I need to adjust my my tension on my bobbin. I don't know, and then I have to back it off. I don't know what it is about starting up, but sometimes it's not quite enough tension when I start up, but then once I get going, I need to adjust it again. And you see how the yarn is not bouncing up nearly as much as it was before. And again, I can just spin on this for hours. I really like the woolly winder on the mini spinner. Honestly, I don't know why you would need anything else. I know that there are people that do not prefer the woolly winder, but in my personal opinion, it is the absolutely only way to go, because you don't have to continually stop and change hooks or move sliders or anything like that. You can just go and go and go and go. You only have to stop if you physically need a break. And it's really nice because when you get in a groove, you don't want to have to stop. So that is the basics about the mini spinner.